Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back on the boardwalk in Seabright, as well as being here with a champion for this district, Congressman Frank Pallone. Let me thank the mayor for his leadership in the community and for hosting us today, as well as Paul Jeffrey of the New Jersey Organizing Project and a community leader down in Ortley Beach. So, Paul, thank you for joining us once again, as well as Robert White, a lifelong resident of Monmouth County, the immediate past president of the New Jersey Realtors. Good to see you again. And least but not last, Chuck McQuillan, who is here, the owner of Eventide Grill at the Marina, and one of the millions of small business owners who rely on the National Flood Insurance Program. And appreciate members of the Municipal Council being here with us as well. We're here today because Congressman Pallone and I, together with members from New York, Louisiana, Florida, Maryland, and Mississippi, on a bipartisan basis, recently introduced landmark legislation to reauthorize and reform the National Flood Insurance Program. Our legislation provides greater stability for homeowners, business owners, and the real estate market. It's a critical lifeline as we grapple with two profound and simultaneous threats. The first threat is inflation, which is squeezing budgets everywhere, but especially for working and middle-class families in New Jersey. And the second threat is an existential threat, which is, of course, climate change. Here in Seabright, as well as in Port Monmouth and Union Beach, communities where I have consistently advocated for federal dollars alongside Congressman Pallone to improve the lives of our constituents, in all of these communities, climate change isn't some theoretical exercise. Up and down the Jersey Shore and in low-lying areas of our state, climate change is a reality that is already here. Stronger and more frequent storms, together with rising seas, pose an enormous risk to the well-being of our state. For proof, all you have to do is remember back to October 29 of 2012, one of the darkest days in New Jersey's history, when the wind and rain of Superstorm Sandy devastated the Garden State and its neighbors. Once the floodwaters receded and the destruction was laid bare, I made a promise to the people of New Jersey. I vowed that I would not stop, we would not rest, until federal relief efforts were brought to bear, making whole what was lost in the storm. I got to work in the Senate, fighting tooth and nail until Congress passed and President Obama signed a $50 billion Sandy recovery package. And I think back to the conversations I had with my colleagues when trying to convince them in the Senate to support the recovery package. I noted that New Jersey has always lent its support to states like Texas and Florida and Kentucky when they needed help. We are, after all, the United States of America. When it came time to support New Jerseyans who lost their homes and businesses, in our hour of greatest need, some of my colleagues had the audacity to say, no. Well, not on my watch. And despite cruel and callous objections by some in Congress, we finally passed the Sandy relief package. We set aside $50 billion for our recovery, authorizing the president through FEMA to approve public assistance projects faster, disperse federal aid quicker, and get our state back on its feet after the largest natural disaster in our state's history. It's one of my proudest achievements in public service. A copy of that bill, that law, hangs in my office. And yet, in many ways, the legislation was only the beginning. When it came to light that FEMA and the insurance companies were systematically lowballing New Jerseyans on their Sandy claims, we led the fight to reopen all claims and adjudicate them fairly, resulting in an additional $260 million being paid out to Sandy survivors that they were entitled to. When flood insurance premiums for recovering Sandy homeowners were poised to skyrocket, we passed legislation that stopped the price hike. We created the Office of the Flood Insurance Advocate, which helps policyholders navigate the complex claims and appeals process. All of these efforts, year after year for more than a decade after the storm, we are keeping with our solemn vow to support the Garden State on its road to recovery. And we haven't given up, just as New Jerseyans haven't given up, which is why today we're adding another step to that journey. Our National Flood Insurance Program Reauthorization Bill implements the lessons that we learned after Superstorm Sandy. It makes sweeping reforms to make the programs more sustainable, affordable, fair, and efficient. It makes premiums more affordable so that we can grow the program, get more people to use the National Flood Insurance Program. It invests in risk mapping and pre-disaster mitigation to deal with the long-term effects of flooding. And it redesigns the claims process so that the nightmares we saw after Sandy never happen again. Our bill focuses on expanding the prevention and mitigation efforts that have been such a success in New Jersey. Last month I was in Hoboken with the governor to celebrate the opening of a new innovative park that underneath it has a nearly 2 million gallon storage tank to hold stormwater runoff. The week before, Congressman Pallone and I were in Monmouth Beach to announce a federal grant to help move a critical pump station away from the flood risk and towards higher ground. It's just one of the many ways that New Jersey leads by example, serving as a model for risk communities all across our country. At the end of the day, we need to reframe our entire disaster recovery framework so that we can rebuild better, rebuild safer, and rebuild more reliably after floods and storms. Because for every dollar that we spend on mitigation, the federal government saves $6 in disaster relief funding. I like those odds, especially in light of the fact that we used to talk about 100-year floods as if that was an accurate description. Because of climate change, though, we're seeing what we thought were once 100 years of floods more and more frequently. In some cases, we've seen them in consecutive years or more often, even in places that haven't had a history of flooding. Hurricane Ida showed us that a storm can travel from the Gulf of Mexico through Louisiana and across Appalachia, arriving on New Jersey's doorsteps with terrifying force. We can't afford to be unprepared when it comes to people's homes and businesses anymore. After all, a home is often the single greatest asset that any New Jerseyan will own. It's the one asset that ties you over during ups and downs in the market. It's what you hope to pass down to your children. And yet right now, too many Americans in coastal states like ours are in danger of having their greatest wealth builder washed away by a flood. 55 years ago, the federal government stood up a system to protect at-risk homeowners through the National Flood Insurance Program. But today, FEMA's own estimates show that it's expected to lose more than 1 million policyholders by the end of the decade. It's no surprise, really, when you consider that its new risk assessment methodology, known as Risk Rating 2.0, is set to raise premiums for homeowners by as much as 18% every single year until policies reach their full new rate. In many places, the new cost will be as high as 2, 3, or even 4 times the amount of their prior rate. Here in Seabright, for example, the average premium goes from $1,132 to $2,423. Just up the road in Kingsburg, the average premium more than triples from $1,000 to $3,500. That's a non-starter at a time when families are still struggling with the high cost of living, and when we need to do everything we can to encourage homeowners to sign up for the program. After all, insurance is about spreading risk across the greatest pool possible. The lower the pool, the higher the premiums. The broader the pool, the lesser the premiums. Right now, only 4% of homeowners, 4% have a flood insurance policy, leaving our nation's economy financially exposed to the extreme weather events we know are coming. Our bill, the National Flood Insurance Program Reauthorization Act, would cap premiums increases at 9% annually, the rate at which they've been growing at for the last 7 years. Instead of jacking up the prices so homeowners can't afford to carry flood insurance at all, our legislation keeps the program affordable. It supercharges mitigation investments in repetitive lost properties so that the NFIP can be put back on stable financial footing. And in the face of climate change, we refuse to abandon the communities who live on its front lines. As I've said, a home is the greatest financial asset a family can own, and we need to make sure that flood insurance remains affordable in order to protect it. Our bill does all of this and more. We which is why I continue to encourage all of my colleagues in the Congress to join us in this fight. Let's reauthorize the National Flood Insurance Program and help it shine as the lifeline that it has been for more than half a century. And with that, let me turn over the podium to someone who has been such a stalwart and steadfast partner in this fight, your Congressman, Congressman Frank Pallone.